This is the Real Power Factor 1 Power Crew. I am back. This is the third part of my first rant on Power Rants. Now, shall we begin? Let's. As I said in my last video, I would be talking about Friday the 13th and Voltron. As well as many video game series. Now, Friday the 13th, I'll just kind of quickly go over the stuff so you all understand. Friday the 13th had a remake, which unfortunately really wasn't a remake of the first one. It was a remake of the second part of Friday the 13th. Now, the remake, it wasn't that bad, but the fact that they didn't do really anything different than how the second part of Friday the 13th did stuff anyway, definitely hit people with a shocker. It was like, you knew what he was going to do before he did it. You knew they were going to die. You knew the majority of them were going to die. You knew at the end at the end of the dock scene that he was going to jump up and grab her and kill her. You knew that was going to happen before it happened. So the whole frightening little scenes to happen didn't happen. You expected every moment, everything he was going to do, you expected it. So the whole thing didn't do too well at all. Now, another one that didn't do too well, which could be said that people could say that it did do well, but I don't think it really did because it hasn't gotten any new episodes at all yet, is the newer Voltron Force series. It's supposed to be after Voltron the Third Dimension, I believe. It follows the original cast and crew trying to get their lions back from a newer menace. And eventually... Eventually, the main villain of the last series comes back and tries to defeat them. But, unfortunately, the way the show was going, they were trying to hit towards a new audience. They made a newer little Voltron that the kids piloted. They made the kids eventually become each one of the lions. Made this black kid become the one that controlled the green lion. But he was a very intelligent lad. And it allowed he also was able to make the lions maneuver around, where the black one wasn't the center one always. Could make the green one the center, the yellow one the center, the blue one the center, the red one the center. And with that, they each got different abilities. They also had this other girl taken for Princess Allura, and Keith. He even got replaced by another kid. But unfortunately, I think it's because of trying to force these kids are going to become the new Force. Might have been why Voltron didn't take off too well. Started out really well with the whole same cast and crew. But I'm assuming as soon as they replaced just one of them, which was Pidge, the green lion pilot, as soon as they started replacing them like that, people started to stop watching. Because they wanted to watch it for the original cast and crew, not for new people. Unfortunate. The series did well, but eventually it just ended with a cliffhanger. Now, other series, as I've said, which were Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, Castlevania, and Mega Man have had reboots. Resident Evil recently had not really a reboot, but a newer addition to their franchise, trying to make the series stand out and be different. Resident Evil 6 tried to be completely different than all the other ones were. Tried to be a combination of what Resident Evil Raccoon City was, and what Resident Evil 5 had, and everything. You could run and gun and all of that. But the fact of the matter was, Resident Evil 6 was very much rushed and didn't stand up to anything. Very much has been considered one of the worst Resident Evil games made. Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City has also been considered a very bad Resident Evil game, because it did feel rushed. Very much, or it's not that much you have to play in Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Resident Evil 6 had a lot to play, 24 hours. But you already literally know the storyline after you play it the first time. And then all the times you get to intermeet with people, with the other people, it didn't seem really like it was necessary. They just forced the whole thing into it so you would meet together with them. So it's like, oh yeah, these guys meet with this one. Guess what? You already have done this boss fight before, so guess what? You get to do it again, and it feels just as boring as when you did it the first time. Yeah. Exactly how it feels every time you have one of those crossover connection points. Ending for each one of them is completely different, but it still fails in comparison to how when you play the whole game, you always have those intersecting parts, and those feel more like a letdown rather than something to be really excited about. And really, it really didn't do that well, mainly because it went from horror to try to be action, try to be more like how Operation Raccoon City did with their whole run and gun and third-person view and all that. And don't get me wrong, Resident Evil has been known for a third-person view, but the whole running and gunning in it didn't work out too well. Like, you tried to fire and it wouldn't hit the enemy. You had to eventually stop and shoot like you were in Resident Evil 5. And the whole roll around and dodge stuff really didn't work that much unless you had to. Otherwise, just don't, because it's very complicated to play the game doing that anyway. I mean, I eventually had to basically get my fingers placed in the position I wanted before I wanted to roll in order to make it so I would roll. Because inputting them was very much difficult. Had to use the D-pad and this and the left trigger, whatever, to roll. It's very weird. Do not use the actual joysticks to do that, and if you do, sometimes it was very difficult to do it with them anyway. So eventually you have to rely on what older tactics you had in order to beat the game. And ironically, I beat the game in less than 24 hours using older tactics for Resident Evil 5, which most people say wasn't a good Resident Evil game, but really it was. But it had a lot of the older characters come back, but because of trying to fit a big story into such a small little game, it didn't do too well. Felt like each part of the story wasn't that interesting or unique. Even with all of it together, it still didn't make too much sense. It's one of those, until there's sequels to it, the story itself doesn't matter. Unfortunately. Now, there's other games that have been remade, as I said. They remade Devil May Cry, which, ironically, people are still going to buy the second version of the game. But Capcom really overcompensated and thought, yeah, we'll sell like 2 million copies or whatever. And then they realized about 500,000 or whatever didn't sell. I might be wrong on the amount, but the fact of the matter was there was a huge amount that didn't sell. Mainly because I believe their demo had the first stage only as what you could play as. people weren't exactly excited with how Dante looked, how his weapons looked, how he literally basically said the original one was crap and he didn't like it at all. The whole scene where a wig comes in, hits him on the face, it's like, not in a million years, and he throws it down. Literally was what made most people probably crack and say, I don't want to play this game. Because they felt like it had no respect towards what the original ones were. It tried to be its own, which, yes, it has been its own, but it ticked off a lot of older people and cost Capcom thousands, if not millions of dollars. Now, another one that has been technically remade several times has been Mega Man. Mega Man has had his original series, recently had newer games released, 9 and 10, for Mega Man. Had the series go on from original Mega Man to Mega Man X. Then went from there to Mega Man Battle Network and Mega Man Star Force, and also had Mega Man Zero, and then had Mega Man ZX, and then ZX Advent. And out of all and also Mega Man Legends, which, out of all these series though, really Mega Man, the original series, did really well. Mega Man X also did well. Mega Man Battle Network extremely did well. Star Force was one of those, you could say it did well or it might have not. Mega Man Zero did fairly well because most people liked Zero. Mega Man ZX and ZX Advent did well as well. Mega Man Legends, not exactly what I would say was a very masterful game. Felt very much different and very weird. So I think it might have done well for some people, but for people that really love what original Mega Man was, and all the newer ones that have been made, it definitely feels more unique and different. So it's more of a select group that like that game, rather than a majority of people that like the game. And as I said, Mega Man Battle Network did fairly well. Maybe better than what I'm thinking. Star Force might have done better than what I'm thinking as well, but unfortunately, since there wasn't too much to show here in America for it, there wasn't a lot of people that probably knew of the series or ever played the series. Japan had a whole series for it, had an animated series, same with Battle Network, but neither one of these series really connected. Well, Battle Networks didn't. The one for Star Force, however, did, but it wasn't exactly shown over here, and if it was, I don't know when, and it hasn't been dubbed all the way or whatever, so the series itself has never been finished. But yeah, out of what I've said though, having newer stuff doesn't always mean it will succeed. There's a lot of newer stuff that was added throughout all of these. And a lot of the newer stuff, though, got bashed, got thrashed around by older fans, people that really loved it. And it hurts the company sometimes to learn the hard truth, but sometimes you need to stick with what you had rather than change the image. Because sometimes changing your image is the worst thing you could do. Because people like you for what you originally were. They don't want you to change what you are just so you can fit in with other people. They want you to stay unique, stay to what you truly were beforehand, and keep going with that. I still think I will have one more part of this review, this rant, and you guys can stay tuned till the last part. That is where I will explain why I think the original cast and crew, if they came back, might have a better impact on people than if they had newer people. This is Reboot signing off. May the power protect your power.